Welcome back to Cheddar's Opening Bell. Consumer spending jumping 8.2% in May as coronavirus lockdown restrictions were lifted across the country. But reopening efforts have been halted as the U.S. sees its biggest one-day spike in new coronavirus cases yet. So for more on this, we're joined by Milton Ezrati, Chief Economist at Vested. Milton, it's great to have you with us this morning. Now, this economic data positive does appear to come at a cost, right, of a new wave infections that we've seen. Do you think that we're going to see a reversal in the recovery because of what's been happening?
Well, we could. It depends on the authorities. Like Texas has started to end the reopening. You have a lot of retailers saying they're not going to reopen stores. You just had an item on Microsoft. If that happens, then these statistics don't mean anything. The economy will relapse. And that could be a tragedy for employment, especially since some of the people on unemployment have are running out of their extra benefits.
That's right. Next month, I'm just looking at some data too from JP Morgan. JP Morgan noting a rise in coronavirus cases as restaurant spending did increase. So that's, I guess, one tangible example that we can look at there. Is it worthwhile to pay attention to this economic data that we're seeing that's backward looking if more lockdown restrictions could be on their way again?
You're quite right. If there are more lockdown restrictions put in place, then these statistics mean nothing. They're an indication of how the economy might have recovered if we didn't have this problem, but that's all. They don't mean anything if we go back to lockdown.
Now,
or even a partial lockdown.
And that's the concern, right? I mean, we're also learning just minutes ago that Microsoft is closing all of its retail locations. It does have one here in New York City, a pretty big one. That stock down fractionally this morning, and that's not going to bode well based on what we saw earlier this week when Apple announced that it was needing to reclose some stores, made those announcements across several days this week. But we do want to turn to the IPO market because that paints a little bit of a different picture, Milton. The country's second biggest grocer, Albertsons, going public today. What are your thoughts in investing in the grocery market right now? This is a company that priced a downsize offering at a lower than expected price last night.
Well, Albertson has had trouble in the past, and I confess I don't know all the details on this particular issue. But I think that the problems here with Albertson are more aimed at the particular company. It had problems the last time it tried this. It's having problems again. It may have to do with management. I don't know. I don't have the details there. But I would say that the rest of the IPO market is trying to take advantage of this surge we've had in the market on the hopes that this will clear up. That seemed to be going well. The Albertson deal is kind of an anomaly, and it's probably based on that company.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, right? Because two SPACs pricing last night, Fusion Acquisition and Kensington Acquisition pricing upsize IPOs, and then this hearing loss biotech company, Akuyos, also pricing an upsize IPO. So it does seem like there is demand for these companies. If you're an investor on the sidelines, you want growth, would you invest in these IPOs because of their potential return for growth in what could be a more stabilizing market throughout the summer?
Well, that's the bet. If we do not have the lockdowns, then the market looks good and the IPOs look good, and that's unavoidable. But if we have a return to lockdown, as you said about the economic statistics, none of this matters.
So when you look at the market, Milton, are you expecting that we hover near current levels? Are you expecting that we take a turn lower? Obviously, we've seen cases rise to records now for several days. States start to pause their reopening plans in Texas and Florida, North Carolina, Louisiana, Kansas, right? I mean, the list only seems to be growing.
Well, and we expected that we would see a spike and we would see some of this hesitation among the authorities. If the treatments continue to progress, if we have some signs of a vaccine, then the lockdowns will cease. The economy can come back. This market is a good bet. If, however, the lockdowns have to be put back in place, then all bets are off. And no, it is not a good investment. So it's really a bet on our ability to cope with the spike in infections, which were expected on the one hand, and that we can get some technological change in the biomedical area, the vaccine or treatments. Those are positives. If we can't, then it's a negative, and we really have a kind of a binary situation here.
We got to leave it there. Thank you for your insight. That's Milton Ezrati, Chief Economist at Vested.